That morning, I woke up to an unbelievable sight. Over 100 strangers gathered in my backyard, setting up tables, blasting music, and Karen, my troublesome neighbor, standing there, microphone in hand, acting like she owned the place. Her shrill voice echoed through my property as she welcomed her guests. I rubbed my eyes in disbelief. Was this some bizarre dream? No, this was real, and it was happening on my land. I tried to be civil, really. I did. "Excuse me," I called out, walking toward her with forced politeness. "What exactly is going on here?" Karen simply rolled her eyes, dismissing me with a wave. That's when I made my decision. If Karen wanted entertainment, my dogs would provide it. Trust me, you won't believe what happened next. I've always considered myself a peaceful person. 6 months ago, I moved to this quiet suburban neighborhood, seeking tranquility after years in the bustling city. My companions? 5 loyal dogs who mean the world to me: Max, the gentle German Shepherd; Luna, my protective Doberman; Charlie and Cooper, the playful Labrador brothers; and little Bella, a Jack Russell with the heart of a lion. They were my family, my solace after long workdays as a veterinary technician. From day one, I made genuine efforts to integrate into the community. I baked cookies for neighbors, volunteered at local events, and always kept my property immaculate. Everyone welcomed me warmly. Everyone except Karen Thompson from across the street. Karen, with her perfectly highlighted bob and perpetual scowl, embodied every "can I speak to the manager" stereotype imaginable. Within my first week, she'd already filed 2 noise complaints about my dogs, though they rarely barked except when playing in the afternoons. When I installed a beautiful bird feeder, she complained about attracting vermin. When I planted roses along my fence, she insisted they were encroaching on the neighborhood aesthetic. "Your dogs are a menace to this peaceful community," she declared during our third encounter, standing on my doorstep with arms crossed. "Some of us have important jobs and need proper rest." This, despite the fact that my dogs were inside sleeping at the time. I tried everything: soundproofing my yard, adjusting my dog's schedules, even sending her a peace offering of homemade bread. Nothing satisfied Karen. At neighborhood meetings, she'd speak about me in third person, though I sat 3 chairs away. Some people shouldn't own animals if they can't control them. Her campaign against me was relentless. Last Tuesday, I noticed Karen frequently peering over her fence, measuring my backyard with her eyes, making calls while pointing at my property. Strange, but I dismissed it. Perhaps another petty complaint brewing. My backyard was my sanctuary, a spacious area with a small pond, flowering trees, and a beautiful patio where my dogs could roam freely. I'd invested considerable time creating this haven. Then came Saturday morning. I'd worked a grueling overnight emergency shift at the clinic, crawling into bed at 7 a.m., exhausted. 3 hours later, thumping bass jolted me awake. Disoriented, I stumbled to my window and froze in absolute shock. My backyard had transformed into party central. Tables covered in pink tablecloths dotted my lawn. A bounce house occupied the corner where my dogs usually played. A DJ booth blasted happy birthday remixes. Streamers hung from my trees. And there, directing caterers where to place food trays, stood Karen, microphone in hand, acting like the queen of my castle. I threw on clothes, heart pounding with disbelief and rage. My dogs, confused by the commotion, paced anxiously behind the sliding door. As I stepped onto my back porch, dozens of unfamiliar faces turned toward me. Children splashed in my pond. Teenagers took selfies against my garden wall. A massive "Happy 10th Birthday, Madison" banner stretched across my patio. "Karen!" I called out, pushing through clusters of guests. What is happening here? She turned, irritation flashing across her face before morphing into practiced sweetness. Oh, you're finally awake. I thought you'd sleep through the whole thing. Why are all these people in my yard? I demanded, struggling to keep my voice level. Karen laughed dismissively, waving her hand. Well, Madison wanted an outdoor party, and your yard is just sitting here unused most days. I figured since you're always working, you wouldn't mind. Plus, your dogs ruin everyone's peace. I thought this would make us even. My jaw dropped. Even? You trespassed on my property. You need to end this now and get everyone out. Karen's smile hardened. Don't be ridiculous. We've already paid the caterers. Madison would be devastated. Besides, she lowered her voice, no one likes the crazy dog lady anyway. Just go back inside for a few hours, we'll be done by 4. Behind me, I heard my dogs whining at the door, confused and anxious. Looking around at my violated sanctuary, something inside me snapped. Karen had crossed the final line. You have exactly 5 minutes to announce this party is over, I said with dangerous calm. Karen smirked. Or what? You'll call the police? Go ahead, my brother-in-law is the sheriff. That's when I made my decision. If Karen wanted entertainment for her party guests, my dogs would provide a performance they'd never forget. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Karen had completely ignored my ultimatum, turning her back to continue directing her catering staff. The party escalated, music growing louder, children running wilder, adults drinking heavier. My blood pressure rose with each passing moment as I stood frozen on my own patio, invisible in my own backyard. Everyone! Karen suddenly announced through her microphone, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Let's thank our generous neighbor for letting us use this beautiful space. She gestured toward me with exaggerated flourish. Dozens of strangers turned, raising glasses in my direction with awkward smiles. I did not give permission for this, I shouted over the music. This is trespassing. Karen's smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed dangerously. She leaned into the microphone again. Some people just don't understand community spirit. Don't worry. Folks, continue enjoying yourselves. The partygoers exchanged uncomfortable glances, but followed Karen's lead. A woman nearby whispered to her husband, "That's the dog lady Karen warned us about. Apparently, she's unstable." Unstable? Me? I was being painted as the villain in my own home invasion. I retreated inside, hands shaking as I called the local police station. There are over 100 strangers in my backyard, I explained frantically. They're trespassing. I need officers here immediately. 20 excruciating minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. To my horror, one greeted Karen with familiar ease. What seems to be the problem, Miss S. Thompson? Karen's transformation was instantaneous, her voice softening, eyes widening with practiced innocence. Oh, Officer Davis, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. My neighbor kindly offered her yard for Madison's birthday, since mine is being landscaped. But now she's changed her mind mid-party. We'll be finished by 4 and clean everything up spotlessly. I promise. That's a complete lie, I protested. I never. Officer Davis held up his hand. Ma'am, interrupting won't help. Look, we've got serious incidents across town. If Miss S. Thompson guarantees cleanup and keeping noise reasonable, perhaps you could compromise just for today? Filing trespassing charges against 50 families with children would be complicated. I stood speechless. Karen's smug smile behind the officer's back told me everything. Her brother-in-law might not be the sheriff, but she clearly had connections. Fine, I finally muttered. 4 o'clock. Not a minute later. As the officers left, Karen approached, voice honeyed but eyes cold. See? Being neighborly isn't so hard. Oh, and could you keep those mutts quiet? They're upsetting the children. From inside, my dogs continued barking, distressed by the invasion of their territory. Through the patio doors, I could see Max pacing anxiously, Luna standing alert, the others huddled together nervously. I retreated inside, desperate for allies. I called neighboring houses, but responses were telling, "Sorry, I don't want trouble with Karen," or last time I crossed her, she reported my fence height to the HOA weekly for months. By 2 p.m., the situation had deteriorated further. Returning from the bathroom, I discovered 3 teenage guests wandering my living room, opening cabinets and drawers. "What are you doing in my house?" I demanded. A girl with heavy eyeliner shrugged, looking for the bathroom. "Nice dogs." She reached toward Bella, who growled defensively. "Out! Now!" I herded them toward the door, heart pounding. Outside, the party had devolved into chaos. Someone had moved my patio furniture into a circle for some drinking game. Children were climbing my prized Japanese maple. The pristine pond where my dogs loved to paddle now contained floating cups and party debris. I spotted Karen holding court by the makeshift bar, laughing loudly while gesturing toward my house. "And you should see inside dog hair everywhere. Probably hasn't cleaned since moving in." That's when I saw it, the final straw. A heavy-set man stumbled backward, spilling an entire glass of red wine across my meticulously maintained garden bed, crushing the rare orchids I'd spent months nurturing. Without apologizing, he simply laughed and grabbed another drink. My dogs erupted into frenzied barking. Through the glass door, I could see them jumping, distressed by the noise and invasion. "Can someone shut those mutts up?" Karen shouted, covering her ears dramatically. "They're ruining Madison's special day. This is exactly why the neighborhood committee is discussing pet restrictions." Something inside me snapped a calm, crystal clarity, replacing my previous rage. Karen wanted a show? She'd get one. I walked deliberately to my security panel and disabled the backyard motion sensors. Then I approached my anxious pack. "It's okay, babies," I soothed, kneeling beside them. "How would you like to attend a party?" Max's ears perked up. Luna's tail gave a hesitant wag. The Labrador brothers looked at each other, then at me, their excitement building. Little Bella, always the fiercest, stood ready for whatever mission I had in mind. I reached for their leashes, then paused. No, this situation called for something different. Instead, I opened my hall closet and removed 5 specially designed vests I used for my volunteer work at the children's hospital. Each dog sat patiently as I strapped them into their bright red therapy dog vests. "Remember your training," I whispered, stroking each furry head. "But today, we're going to bend the rules just a little." From the kitchen drawer, I retrieved 5 dog-friendly cupcakes I'd baked for their upcoming birthday celebration. I placed them carefully in my treat pouch. Then I filled another pouch with something else, something that would ensure this party would be memorable for everyone, especially Karen. I checked my phone. 2:30 p.m. Karen had promised to be gone by 4. That gave me 90 minutes to reclaim my territory. Taking a deep breath, I unlatched the patio door. My 5 loyal companions sat at perfect attention, awaiting my command. Outside, the party continued in full swing, oblivious to what was about to happen. "Okay, team," I said quietly, a smile spreading across my face. "Let's go introduce ourselves to the uninvited guests." I swung the door open wide. 5 pairs of ears perked forward. 5 tails began to wag with building excitement. 5 pairs of eyes looked to me for the signal. I nodded once. Release. And with that single command, My perfectly trained yet thoroughly motivated canine squad bounded into the yard, ready to deliver the party entertainment. Karen would never forget. The moment my dogs burst through the patio doors, time seemed to slow. Max, my German shepherd, led the charge, his powerful 90-pound frame bounding across the lawn with surprising grace. Luna, the sleek Doberman, flanked his right, while Charlie and Cooper, the Labrador brothers, split in opposite directions with military precision. Tiny Bella, all 15 pounds of Jack Russell determination, darted between legs with the speed of a furry bullet. For 3 glorious seconds, nobody noticed. Then, chaos erupted. Dogs! Someone screamed, the single word rippling through the crowd like an electric current. Heads turned. Drinks froze, mid-sip. A collective gasp swept across my invaded backyard. Karen stood by the drinks table, microphone still in hand, her perfectly highlighted bob suddenly rigid with tension. Our eyes locked across the yard. Her expression morphed from confusion to horror as she realized exactly what was happening. "Control your animals!" she shrieked into the microphone, the speakers amplifying her panic. "Someone grab them!" But my dogs weren't ordinary pets. They were therapy dogs, highly trained, exceptionally intelligent, and currently operating under very special instructions. Max reached the buffet table first, his tail wagging with deliberate force. With one magnificent sweep, he cleared the entire row of carefully arranged finger sandwiches. They sailed through the air like tiny edible frisbees, landing on guests' shoes, in the pool, and most satisfyingly one landed perfectly in Karen's open purse. Luna, meanwhile, had discovered the birthday cake. Rather than eating it, she simply sat beside the table, her intense Doberman stare fixed on anyone who approached. A man reached for a slice. Luna growled softly. He backed away. Luna resumed her silent guard duty, ensuring no one would enjoy dessert today. The Labrador brothers had found their calling at the bounce house. Charlie circled the structure, barking rhythmically, while Cooper had somehow managed to climb inside. Through the transparent walls, I could see him bouncing joyfully among screaming children who couldn't decide whether to be terrified or delighted. Most chose terrified. "Get that beast out of there!" Karen screeched, pointing frantically at the bounce house. 2 dads approached cautiously but retreated when Charlie's friendly bark deepened into something more suggestive. But it was little Bella who truly embodied chaos. My Jack Russell Terrier had discovered the DJ booth. Somehow, she'd managed to leap onto the table, her tiny paws landing directly on the equipment. The birthday playlist abruptly cut off, replaced by a high-pitched electronic squeal that sent hands flying to ears. "Your dogs are ruining everything." Karen screamed, abandoning the microphone to march toward me, finger pointed accusingly. "I will sue you for." Her threat was cut short as Max, having finished with the sandwiches, decided Karen needed a proper greeting. He bounded toward her with enthusiasm, massive paws landing squarely on her shoulders. Karen Thompson, neighborhood tyrant, party thief, and self-appointed queen of the community, toppled backward with an undignified shriek, landing directly in the kiddie pool, filled with punch. A crimson wave splashed upward, then descended, transforming her white designer outfit into a tie-dyed disaster. Her makeup ran in pink rivulets down her shocked face. The expensive hairdo collapsed like a deflated soufflé. The party froze. Even my dogs paused their systematic destruction. Then, from somewhere near the back fence, a child's giggle broke the silence. Another joined in. Soon, laughter rippled through the crowd, tentative at first, then building to an unstoppable wave. Karen struggled to her feet, punch dripping from her elbows, mascara raccoon circling her eyes. This isn't funny. These animals are dangerous. They should be reported to animal control." As if understanding the insult, Bella abandoned the DJ booth and trotted directly to Karen. The tiny terrier sat at her feet, looked up with innocent eyes, and offered her most impressive trick, a perfectly executed sneeze that splattered the last clean spot on Karen's outfit. The party dissolved into hysterics. Parents were doubled over. Teenagers had phones out, undoubtedly creating tomorrow's viral sensation. Even Madison, the birthday girl, was giggling uncontrollably. "Enough!" Karen screamed, her voice cracking. "Everyone leave! Party's over! This dog woman is insane!" She turned to storm away, dignity in tatters, but found her path blocked by Luna. My Doberman wasn't growling or threatening, simply standing firm, dark eyes communicating a clear message. "Not until you apologize." Karen attempted to sidestep, but Luna mirrored her movement. The crowd watched, enthralled by the standoff. "Call off your beast!" Karen hissed at me, punch still dripping from her ruined outfit. I smiled serenely. "She's not a beast. She's a highly trained therapy dog. They all are. Usually, they comfort hospital patients and assist with anxiety disorders." I paused meaningfully. Today, they're teaching a lesson about trespassing. The remaining guests began gathering their belongings, murmuring apologies as they hurried past me. Parents collected children, teenagers abandoned half-finished drinks, and caterers packed equipment with record speed. Within 15 minutes, only Karen remained still, trapped in her standoff with Luna. "You've made your point," she said through clenched teeth. "Call off your dog." I whistled softly. All 5 dogs immediately returned to my side, sitting in perfect formation, the picture of canine obedience. "If you ever trespass on my property again," I said quietly, "the dogs won't be wearing their therapy vests." "Do we understand each other?" Karen said nothing, but her tight nod spoke volumes. She turned and walked stiffly toward the gate, punch squelching in her expensive shoes. As she reached the exit, I couldn't resist one final comment. "Oh, and Karen? I expect my yard to be professionally cleaned by tomorrow morning. Otherwise, I have some lovely videos to share at the next HOA meeting." The gate slammed behind her. My dogs looked up at me expectantly, tails wagging. "Good dogs," I whispered, kneeling to embrace them. "The very best dogs. If you think my dogs did the right thing, type good dogs in the comments. I want to know how many animal lovers are out there just like me." The silence in my backyard was almost surreal after the chaos. Abandoned cups littered the ground, half-eaten food attracted flies, and the once pristine grass bore the scars of 100 uninvited feet. My dogs had retreated inside, their mission accomplished, now lounging contentedly in various spots around the living room. Max, ever the protector, remained alert by the window, his ears perked at every sound from outside. I was just beginning to assess the damage when the unmistakable wail of police sirens cut through the afternoon air. 2 patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing. Officer Davis, the same one who had dismissed me earlier, stepped out first, followed by 3 additional officers. Their expressions were grim. "Ma'am," Officer Davis called as they approached my gate, "we've received a serious complaint about dangerous animals on your property attacking civilians at a children's birthday party." I smiled calmly and opened the gate. "I was wondering when you'd be back. Please, come in." The officers exchanged confused glances, clearly expecting resistance. I led them to my patio, where I'd already set up my laptop. "Before we discuss anything," I said, "I'd like to show you something important." I pressed play on a video file labeled "Security Footage, Backyard." The screen displayed a clear timestamp from that morning, showing Karen directing caterers onto my property. The audio captured her voice perfectly. Just set everything up. She won't mind. And if she does, what's she going to do about it? I'm on the HOA board. Officer Davis's eyebrows rose as the footage continued, showing my multiple attempts to ask Karen to leave, her dismissive responses, and finally the officer's earlier visit where Karen had claimed I'd given permission. There's more, I said, clicking to another file. This is from my indoor security camera, showing Karen's guests entering my home without permission. The screen clearly showed teenagers rummaging through my belongings. I switched to a third video. And this is from 30 minutes ago. The footage showed my dogs all wearing their therapy vests, entering the yard. While they certainly caused disruption, the video clearly showed not a single person was bitten or physically contacted, except Karen, who was knocked over by my enthusiastic German Shepherd. Those are certified therapy dogs, I explained, retrieving a folder from my desk. Here are their training certificates, vaccination records, and liability insurance documents. They're trained to interact safely with children and vulnerable adults in hospital settings. Officer Davis looked increasingly uncomfortable. Miss S. Thompson claimed your dogs attacked guests and bit several children. As you can see, that never happened. What did happen was trespassing, property damage, and filing a false police report. I gestured to the yard. I estimate several $1,000s in damage to my landscaping alone. The youngest officer cleared his throat. MAAM. When we arrived at Mrs. Thompson's house, she was quite hysterical. She mentioned something about pressing charges and having your dogs put down. A cold anger settled in my chest, but I maintained my composure. Officer, I'd like to formally press charges for trespassing, property damage, and filing a false report. I can provide all necessary documentation, including property boundaries from county records. I retrieved another folder. Here's my deed showing exact property lines, in case there's any question about whose land was invaded today. Officer Davis reviewed the documents, his expression growing increasingly serious. This is very thorough. I believe in being prepared, I replied simply. Just then, a hesitant voice called from the gate. Excuse me? Is this a bad time? I turned to see Madison, Karen's daughter, and the birthday girl standing awkwardly at my fence. Behind her were several adults, including a distinguished-looking man in his 50s who bore a striking resemblance to Karen. May we come in? The man asked. I'm Robert Thompson, Karen's husband. I believe we owe you an apology. Officer Davis nodded to me. We'll give you a moment. We need to discuss how to proceed anyway. The officers stepped aside, speaking in hushed tones. I opened the gate, allowing the small group to enter. Robert Thompson looked genuinely mortified. I was out of town until an hour ago, he explained. I just got home to find my wife in quite a state, and neighbors telling me what happened. I'm absolutely appalled. He extended his hand. I can't apologize enough for my wife's behavior. Madison, a teenager who looked nothing like the entitled monster I'd expected, stepped forward. I didn't know this was your yard, she said quietly. Mom told me you had agreed to let us use it. I'm really sorry. One of the other parents, a woman with kind eyes, added, Several of us questioned Karen when she first directed us here, but she insisted it was all arranged. We should have verified directly with you. I was momentarily speechless. After weeks of feeling isolated against Karen's reign of neighborhood terror, this unexpected support was overwhelming. Robert Thompson looked around at the destruction. I'll have a professional cleaning crew here first thing tomorrow. And of course, we'll cover all damages to your property. Dad, Madison interjected, can I meet the dogs? They were actually pretty cool. I hesitated, then nodded. They're very friendly when they're not on. Special assignment. As if on cue, Max appeared at the patio door, watching curiously. I called him over, and he approached calmly, his therapy dog training evident in his gentle demeanor. Madison knelt to pet him, smiling as he leaned into her touch. "He's beautiful," she whispered. More neighbors began appearing at my gate, not to complain, but to check if I was okay. Miss S. Abernathy, the elderly woman from across the street, brought homemade cookies. The Johnsons from 2 doors down offered to help clean up. Even Mr. Peterson, known for never leaving his house, stopped by to express support. "We've all had run-ins with Karen," Miss S. Abernathy confided, "but nobody had the courage to stand up to her. Until today." Officer Davis approached, notepad in hand. "MAAM, based on the evidence and witness statements, we're prepared to file a report regarding the trespassing and property damage. Do you want to proceed with charges?" I looked at Madison petting Max, at Robert's genuinely contrite expression, and at my neighbors offering support. Something shifted inside me. "I'll need full compensation for damages," I said firmly, "and a written agreement that this will never happen again. But if those conditions are met, I won't press charges." Robert nodded gratefully. "Absolutely. You have my word." As the officers prepared to leave, one of them paused. "Those are really impressive dogs. The department's been looking to start a therapy dog program for victims of trauma. Would you be interested in consulting?" Before I could answer, a commotion erupted at the gate. Karen had returned, her face contorted with rage, still wearing her punch-stained outfit. "Robert, what are you doing fraternizing with her? And Madison, get away from that dangerous animal immediately." Everyone turned to stare. Karen faltered under the collective gaze of the police, her husband, daughter, and neighbors. Officer Davis stepped forward. "Miss S. Thompson, we've reviewed security footage of today's events. I strongly suggest you return home and refrain from making further false statements about your neighbor or her animals." "False statements?" Karen sputtered. "That beast attacked me. It could have killed me." Robert placed a firm hand on Karen's shoulder. "Enough," he said quietly. "We're going home now. We'll discuss this privately." As they led Karen away, Madison turned back to give Max a final pat. "Maybe I could come visit them sometime? Properly invited, I mean." I smiled. "I think they'd like that." As the Thompsons departed, and my neighbors helped begin the cleanup, I realized something profound had shifted in our community. Karen's reign of terror had ended not through confrontation or revenge, but through exposure and truth. My dogs gathered around me, tails wagging as if they understood their mission had been accomplished. The neighborhood was reclaiming itself, one connection at a time, and it had all started with 5 good dogs who knew exactly when to break the rules. 3 weeks after what the neighborhood now referred to as the Great Dog Rebellion, life had settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. My backyard, once a battlefield of territorial warfare, had been completely restored, and honestly, it looked better than before. The professional landscaping crew Robert Thompson hired had replaced my patchy grass with lush sod, planted vibrant flower beds along the fence line, and even installed a small water feature that my dogs absolutely adored. The invoice for Karen's party cleanup had been substantial: $4,750 for landscaping restoration, $1,200 for fence repairs where guests had damaged the wooden panels, and $850 for professional cleaning of my home's interior. Robert had paid it without a single complaint, adding a handwritten note of apology that seemed genuinely remorseful. Karen herself had been conspicuously absent from neighborhood activities. According to Miss S. Abernathy, who had appointed herself my unofficial information liaison, Karen had been removed from the HOA board by unanimous vote. The emergency meeting had apparently been quite dramatic, with several neighbors finally voicing years of accumulated grievances. She just sat there. Miss Abernathy had reported gleefully over tea in my kitchen, getting smaller and smaller in her chair as everyone took turns describing her reign of terror. By the end, she couldn't even look anyone in the eye. Beyond the HOA removal, Karen had received a formal citation from the city for unauthorized event hosting without permits, resulting in a $2,500 fine. The police had ultimately decided against pressing trespassing charges after Robert's intervention, but the incident was documented in official records, a fact that clearly mortified status-conscious Karen. My dogs, the heroes of this suburban saga, had been rewarded magnificently. The day after the incident, I'd driven to the specialty pet store and returned with the canine equivalent of a feast, premium steaks for dinner, artisanal dog cookies, new plush toys, and 5 gleaming new collars, with name tags reading Neighborhood Watchdog. Max wore his with particular pride, strutting around the yard as if he'd been promoted to general. Luna, typically dignified, allowed herself uncharacteristic displays of joy, rolling in the fresh grass with her new squeaky duck. The Labrador brothers had immediately initiated a complex game of tug-of-war with their rope toy, while tiny Bella had claimed the largest bed, clearly meant for Max, and dared anyone to challenge her occupation. The most unexpected development came from Officer Davis, who had indeed followed up about the therapy dog program. My dogs now visited the police station twice monthly, providing comfort to victims giving statements in difficult cases. Max had shown particular talent for this work, his gentle presence somehow making the unbearable slightly more bearable for those in trauma. As for Madison, she had become a regular visitor, properly invited this time. Despite my initial reservations, she proved to be nothing like her mother, thoughtful, kind, and genuinely remorseful about the incident. She now came by twice weekly to help with the dog's training sessions, showing remarkable aptitude for animal handling. "I want to be a veterinarian," she confided one afternoon as we watched the dogs play. "Mom always said it wasn't prestigious enough, but Dad thinks it's perfect for me." This evening, as sunset painted my restored yard in golden hues, I sat on my new patio furniture, another Thompson restitution item, with a glass of wine. The dogs lounged contentedly around me, occasionally lifting their heads when neighborhood sounds caught their attention. From across the street, I spotted Robert and Madison walking toward my gate. Madison waved enthusiastically, while Robert carried what appeared to be a homemade casserole. Behind them, several other neighbors followed with dishes and drinks, an impromptu neighborhood gathering forming without pretense or permission seeking. As I opened the gate to welcome them, I caught sight of Karen watching from her window. Our eyes met briefly before she let the curtain fall. There was no anger in that glance, just resignation, and perhaps a touch of regret. Justice, it seemed, had indeed been served, not through vengeance or escalation, but through community standing together against bullying and entitlement. My dogs gathered around me, tails wagging in anticipation of more attention from our guests. I knelt to ruffle Max's fur. "Good dogs," I whispered. "The very best dogs. Do you think Karen deserved these consequences? If you agree, type justice served in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss my next dramatic neighborhood saga."